Welcome to For the Love of Books, Bees Books Edition, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries.
Hello, this is Pari.
And this is Jenny, and we're here to talk about
These books, or are we? We both sound a bit defeated.
We do.
Because we have yet again been betrayed.
Betrayed
by technology.
Yes.
So we have another lost episode to add to our increasingly strong list.
And it was the best episode ever, even better than the last best.
It was.
So
yeah, I mean, and we're not going to be able to recreate it because we are different people now since we recorded it a week ago.
Exactly.
So we did try recording an episode, and we're hoping, and that episode is gone.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping this episode works.
Yes.
So if you are listening to us, thank you. Whoever. But yes, we're going to get on with it and we're going to play around with the format a little bit this time around because we have been burned too many times.
Yes, we have.
So this is a way to give us a break and to give listeners a break as well. So hopefully it'll work for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to come back and talk. Well, I say back, for you it's the first time we're talking about this, but we're talking about flowers.
We are.
This time around. And I have the same two books that I had last week, but you, Jenny, have brand new books.
I do. I have one that I've talked about before, but another two that I did not talk about before.
Wow.
And also, one of the books that you read, you're further on in it because you hadn't finished it
That's
last time.
true.
So there's still stuff to talk about.
There is, especially because, as you know, my memory is atrocious.
Yeah.
So last time I was so well prepared, as I was telling you just before we hit record. I had post-its, I had notes in my head. This time I have just had a gigantic session of bookbug, so my brain is off with the birds. So good luck to everybody. Can I show you my books first since you already know them? So my first book is called The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel. Jenny looks entirely unimpressed because she's seen this book before. She's like, yes, get on with
also,
it.
last time when you introduced it, you went, The Story of Art.
You're so right. Yeah, because that's how it is on cover. It is, the without men is hidden. So people with eyesight issues, I'm so sorry. But it's also responding to a book. So the writer, it's an art history tome. And she's responding to a book that was called The Story of Art, which covered art history in Europe, I think, through decades, centuries, but had one woman. So this is her, I'm so sorry. There are women artists, and I'm going to write about that.
Right, and you know, as we said before, it's important. And let me see some of the pictures again. And I know you can't see this at home. Sorry.
I'm going to show you
with you.
I'm going to show you no pictures that I had before because the post-its are gone.
Yes.
But I'm going to show you a bit from the book that I've not got to, but I'm about to get to, and it's a stunning quilt.
Oh,
there's no flowers, but isn't it beautiful?
That is beautiful.
So yeah, there are a lot of flowers in the beginning of the book, and I'll talk about why in a bit, but not so many flowers before. Oh, there is a flower that I just saw, but this might alarm you a bit. Jenny, are you prepared?
Okay.
Take a deep breath. Oh, there is a flower, right?
So I'm looking over that side.
Yeah, look at both.
Okay.
They're both by the same artist. Her name is Nikki de Saint Pal. And the two sculptures are, oh God, one is in Swedish. The English translation is She, a Cathedral, and the other is The Empress. Oh. And they are larger than life-size sculptures. She calls them Nana sculptures.
They're huge.
And this one, the one that I showed you that might alarm you, is of a woman, like a very round woman, and her two breasts. And the breasts are like a bedroom and a functioning kitchen inside, so you can walk in. And in this there was like a bar, in the other one there's a bar, a cinema, playing like a movie starring Greta Garbo. All sorts of weird things going on in here. This is modern art, as they say.
Which is my face is blank.
Yeah, but I would love to go into this little sculpture. It's very bright and colourful, and I'd love to see how a kitchen and bedroom work. And
it does point out that art is not just modern art, but art in general is really in the eye of the beholder. And we all see something different. The first thing I seen there was the flowers because that's what we were looking for. And it wasn't until my eyesight kind of realised what else was happening.
The flowers were.
Yes. But something that big, like these big sculptures that we see now popping up, like the Kelpies, for example,
Yeah.
they are so big, you can see them from so far away. Sometimes you lose the idea of them when you're too close.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah. But I also like that there are so many public examples of art, because not everyone is going to go to a museum or an art gallery. And this is, I guess, a way of like bringing it out there, so that just you're on your way to the station and suddenly you're like, oh, what is this? And I that's interesting, I think.
Exactly.
But also, like what you said about it being in the eye of the beholder, I feel like this book, and Katie, first name basis now, because I'm like a chunk of the way through the book, what she does is almost act as a translator, because she's an art critic, but she's writing about these artists obviously through her interpretation. But it's a language that you and I may not be able to recognize. Maybe we will. Maybe we'd recognize it differently. But sometimes when we just see something, we don't really know the context of it, the social, political, cultural, or what it's responding to. And she's writing about it in a way that kind of helps us understand. So it's almost like taking a visual language that the artist created, and she's translating it for us non-artists, I guess, which I found very helpful. And speaking of visual language,
yes, sorry, we jumped right in with your first book there.
Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more, because I don't think I presented what it's about. But I want to like talk about my just like introduce my second book. It's called Lightfall: The Girl and the Galudrian by Tim Probert, which is a stunning graphic novel. And the last time I spoke about this in the Lost Best episode, I could find no flowers throughout the book, but as Jenny very helpfully pointed out to me, there are flowers on the cover.
There is,
and that's what I'm thinking. Going and looking at it, because it's set in a forest, it's set in a fantasy kingdom. She is the assistant, she's the adopted granddaughter of the pig wizard, and and she like helps with potions and stuff. I was like, surely there's a flower in there. No, but flowers on the cover.
I just want to remind everyone what Pari said there. Pig wizard.
Pig wizard. He is indeed a pig wizard. Yes. He is a wizard who is a pig.
What more can you ask for? Who cares if the flowers in it?
Yes. Can I see your book?
Yes, of course. So the first one is the one I spoke about before. It's called The Three Dahlias.
Yeah.
And I went very literal because dahlia is a flower. And this is a wonderful book. I absolutely loved it. It is everything I want in a crime book. So there are maps at the front, there's a cast list, and it's like just wonderful. So the author of the actual book, Katie Watson, is writing now in the current time, if that makes sense. But it's about books that were written in the golden age of crime. So between the two wars. And I love golden age crime. I like modern crime, and I love that these two are mixed up. And basically, the three dahlias are the three main characters in the book, and you hear their voices. They have their own part of the book as they're going through. And the books, the fictional books, are kind of, they make reference to Poirot and Miss Marple. It's that kind of golden age crime. And the first Dahlia, who is really called Rosalind, I want to say, she played Dahlia Lively, I think her name is. She played her on screen, did a couple of movies, I think, and then later on, Carol in the book, she plays Dahlia on TV, in a long-running TV series. And then we've got the third Dahlia that's coming in now. They're about to revive this, and she is going to be playing Dahlia now. She's an actress who's had a bit of a troubled past, and she's kind of fresh to this kind of story, and she doesn't really know anything about it. She's not read the book, she doesn't know anything about it. And basically all three Dahlias are invited to the house of the author, who died a long time ago. So
it's not her murder mystery.
No, it's not. And it's like a big kind of like convention almost to this author and her books. So there's loads of fans turning up. They're all in period costume. There's all sorts of things happening in the grounds of this big house. But only certain people are allowed in the house. So the actresses themselves, the production crew for the film that's coming up, and a couple of VIP guests are allowed into the house. And there's like a kind of murder mystery. Somebody's supposed to be killed, and you have to try and find the clues in the garden. All sorts of things happening.
Lots of flowers abound.
Yes. And then a real murder happens, and it's just wonderful.
Okay, but I want to hear more about the book.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you will have something new to tell me. Actually, that is a challenge.
Yes,
tell me something new. But you don't remember what you told me last time.
I don't.
I remember a little bit because I remember more, but maybe you'll surprise me. What about the other two new books?
So, these are a bit, shall we say, not exactly flowers.
Okay.
But there are flowers in it. So the first one is by Preston and Child, and it's called Relic. And this book is quite old. It was out in the 90s, which isn't old to some people, but it's old to others. And it's a wonderful mix of Dan Brown, Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, Matthew Riley, the author. It's like a kind of proper adventure story with a monster in it. And how I'm squeezing it into flowers is that the monster so it's set in the museum in New York, the big natural history museum, and there's a murder. It's really like a murder, and basically this monster is in this museum.
I love museums.
Yes.
I don't love monsters, but I love monsters in museums.
In books, it's fine.
In books, yes. And the cover of this book, Relic, looks like it is obviously a relic, but it looks really sinister.
Yes.
It's a museum exhibit. It looks like stone, almost totemy, like a totem pole, but really like will kill you when you sleep.
Yes. So yes, I'm going to talk a bit about that. Okay. And then my third book is a graphic novel, Pari. And I don't know if you've read this or not.
I have not.
It's called Sidekicks. It is book 1 in the series, and it's by Dan Santat.
Your pal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who wrote the
Equinox.
Thank you. And I just seen it on the shelf basically yesterday. And read it in my lunch break.
Fantastic.
And it's great. I love it's book 1. There are absolutely no flowers whatsoever in it.
No, it doesn't look like a flowery book.
But since you've got a graphic novel, I think I was going to say
novel, so that's it. The friendship blooms.
Yes, Pari, thank you. Yeah.
So I'm going to quickly go over the first book that I spoke about a bit. So essentially, in the story of Art Without Men, I'm making a parenthesis around my mouth as well. Her point is that like a lot of the great artists that we tend to think of, remember in like our cultural imagination happen to be men. Even if you like think about somebody, I think you'd struggle, like even if you know art like fairly well, maybe if you know art a lot, you might know women artists. But for like lay people like us, I think we would struggle.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, to think of, and like you said, I keep referring to the last episode. I don't remember something. But as you said, that it's easier to think of women authors.
Yes, absolutely.
Than women artists. And one of the reasons that she writes in this book is that it cost a lot more money to make art because you had it's not only just the resources and tools like to paint and stuff, but also it was like actually impossible for women to get into the space unless they came from really well-off backgrounds and their families were supportive. So in the beginning, you see like women in a very specific role creating, like being forced to create very specific kind of art in which flowers play a huge role because they thought that men should be relegated, or no, men should be wanting to, should have the role of creating things like mythology and war and like all these big serious topics, whereas women should be relegated to creating things about domestic stuff and gardens and flowers and all these lowly things that women, like no serious person is going to do. But then women went with it. They took it and they made it their own and they became like so much better at it than men because they were like, doing all these different kinds of experiments and stuff. So not just with paintings and the different perspectives, but also like with paper and with quilts and with sculptures and stuff. And what Katie says is, I think, like her sort of thing for the book is that if we only see the world through one perspective, which is the male perspective, even if it's art, you're getting a very singular idea of the world. Whereas with having women there, you're learning about the world in a different way, which I love. So it's not so much as the without men isn't like I don't like men and I'm not going to write about them. It's because men have been written about in like the art world forever. They're still being written about. And so she starts off in Europe in the 1500s, and it's mostly Western art, but she also goes and like North America and things. But she also like goes to like other countries and other continents a bit and other art forms, so not just painting. And it's such a fantastic sort of glimpse because she it's like just brief pockets of information about each artist and like full color photos as well. But she writes about the context in which they were creating and like what I said before about what they were responding to. So why it was important that they were presenting themselves or their work in a certain way. And I went, so in the last week since we recorded, I was in Leeds and there was this, I went to the art gallery there thinking of this book. And there was this exhibit, like I like going there because there's changing exhibits all the time. So there was this exhibit called Silent Echoes Spoken Truth by Curtis Holder, who is a contemporary British artist, I think English, and he's like a black British artist. And the Leeds museums are like responding a little bit to the kind of point that she make. That is, a lot of art in Europe has been like by white people, like on the like that's the ones that's portrayed in museums and stuff. But other people have been making art, and it's everyone's loss if this is the stories that we're not seeing. So it's not so much as like making room for somebody by removing another person. It's just making more room at the table for everybody. So this project was so cool. He spoke to 8 different people in Leeds who had a connection to the gallery. They were like black and brown people mostly, no, all of them I think. And he just like had a dialogue with them, and he made like these fantastic, beautiful portraits around. So there's like pre-sketches and things of like the whole process. And there was a movie as well who they were all talking about how it's important for them to see like themselves represented in like this fancy art gallery because they'd never have seen something like that. But also all of them were invited to pick an artwork from the art gallery and write a response about why why it resonated with them. So like you were saying, art in the eye of the beholder, they all saw different things based on where they were in their lives, but they wrote like a little bit of a story. And so it was beside their giant portraits, there would be this artwork that they'd selected and the story of. It was so good. And it was like what she's saying, that you're looking at art in a different way, like because you wouldn't have read it in the same way. Yeah. So they're also acting as translators a bit of their personal experience, but also based on who you pick, you're going to, based on your previous experiences, you're going to different things will resonate. And so it was really nice to have this kind of inclusive, collaborative, participatory art project, which is just expanding who is, like who is included in these spaces. So I really love that. And like, I think this, like I think a lot of different spaces are trying to not correct, I think, because it was a point in time when unfortunately this all like the absences and erasures were there. But now we're in a point of time where we're going back to history and also in the current time and trying to like sort of address that.
I like the way you've described it there. You're not trying to block anything out. You're just trying to make more room at the table. Yeah. You're just trying to say, well, yes, these were brilliant. This is the best picture I've ever seen. Yeah. But at the same time, we also had this going on. Yeah. And it's nice. Yeah. It's a nice way to do it, making room for people.
And that's the tone of the book. Like, because I think, I've been reading this in the train, the book, and every time like I open the sort of the book and people can see the cover, I'm like, oh, they have some sort of perception either about the book or about me. But the tone is very much like in the introduction she lays out. It's not about like, me wanting to sort of exclude anybody. It's that these women have been excluded and they were really popular at that time. In fact, like the more I've read, they've influenced a lot of the male artists, like their work, because they were all working in communities, right? Like at that time and now as well. And they all sort of spoke to each other and like, shared and learned from each other. But that story, the sort of ancestry has also been lost a bit, even though at that time, a lot of them were even more popular than their male contemporaries. But it's an erasure of, I think, archiving. And this is just like adding that archive. So it has its own blind spots and biases, and she acknowledges that. And she's like, I just want to start the conversation. And hopefully other people will write their own versions. And it's the same, right? Like she's writing from a woman in like Britain's perspective, someone in India, like from mine, like if someone wrote a book about Indian artists, it would be totally different. And that would be, I think that would add more to the world of like books, to art, to culture, to conversation in a way that, I think is really important.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yes, and I had a completely different conversation than last time. Well, you tell me now about the three Dahlias.
So, as I was saying, so it's mainly about these three characters, and they each have their own voice. And the older actress, Rosalind, she's kind of now relegated to kind of playing, older women,
Mums,
grandmoms, and kind of being, that kind of way. Carol, the middle one, she basically lives her life like the character. She's like played her for so long that she very much, she hits the ground running when she gets to the kind of the big house, and there's all these people wanting to talk to her. She's all dressed up in the gear. She arrives on the motorbike that she drives in the TV show because she basically was given it after the TV show, all this kind of stuff. And then we've got Posey, who's the new one. She's been a child actress, and she basically, her mum and dad took all her money off her. She's went through a rough time, and she realised that. And this film is hopefully her kind of comeback, but she's still quite young. And basically, the three Dahlias are given a note to meet at a folly, because there's a folly in this big house. It's all big houses should have.
And we didn't speak, I think, about the house this time around, but on the cover, like apart from these three gorgeous pictures of the flowers, there's the proper golden age house. Yeah.
And it's wonderful. The map at the front is 3 pages of maps.
And you love maps.
And it's just, and I sit there and I flick back every time they say, they went to the China room, and I'm like, right, where's the China room? How did they get there?
Yeah.
There are no secret passages in this, which is quite good. But there are kind of things happening. And then
a folly.
Yes, there's a picture of the folly in the map. And there's stables, there's a boathouse, there's a gate.
Can I see the folly? Where is the folly? Oh, that's not what I was expecting. What a folly is! I thought it was like a bell-like thing. No. This is the opposite of what I was.
Usually, the folly is basically a pointless building. So usually some kind of tower or kind of
like a guard structure thing.
Just kind of the. Basically, Victorians had a bit of extra money once,
just for aesthetic.
Right. And in these kind of books, it's always where you go for an assignation.
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing.
I was imagining a folly as literally you fall over and die.
No. So they get invited to folly. There is also a murder spiral.
Of course.
So there's like formal gardens, and then there's like gardens. The murder spiral is basically, because the author of the fictional books was known as the Queen of Poisons. The spiral garden basically has all the plants that she uses in her books.
All the poisons.
Yes,
yeah. Wow. Oh, that's a new fact.
Right. So they get invited to the folly. They've each been given a photo of something that they've done in the past. Basically, it's like they're going to be blackmailed.
Right.
But nobody turns up apart from the three of them. And they get to kind of talking, and basically they go on to get together and solve the murder that happens later on in the book. So it's really cleverly done. There's a few of them now. I already have the second one waiting to be read. And I just love the fact that the three of them are so different, but what brings them together is that they're all playing the same character.
Yeah.
And though you'll have your favourite Doctor Who, or you'll have your favourite James Bond, or your favourite Poirot. The character is still the character.
Yeah.
And that's what brings them together. Slowly, but it kind of unites them in the fact that they know how the books work. They know, what Delia would do, basically.
Right.
So they kind of look at it from that point of view. The murder that happens is kind of based around one of the stories as well. So they're quite, so even though Posey hasn't read any of it or anything like that, she's learning as she's going along. And they're trying to say, this, that, and anything. And they all have their own voice. They all have their own part to play. Nobody's kind of Carol takes the lead because she's quite bossy. But
she has the right to be.
Yeah.
I don't know her, but I believe in her.
But everybody, all three of them have their voice, something to say about it.
Yeah.
They have a different view on things. So one person will see something, but somebody else will see something else.
Yeah.
And right, okay, actually, and it just works so well.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah. And it ends brilliantly. So the actual story itself ends well, but basically the very last kind of epilogue is the film that's getting made. Carol is going to be starring in it, a guest star, but Rosalind, the older actress, is not. No, it's the other way around.
Yes.
So Rosalind is in it, so the older kind of, but Carol's not in it. And throughout the book, she tries to speak to the film crew and that, and trying to get in, and they're not having any of it. But at the very epilogue of the book, she gets a phone call from Rosalind and Posey, basically saying, "We need you on set," and she's like, "No, I'm not needed," blah blah. And they're like, "No, there's been a murder. You need to come help us." And then it ends, and it's like, oh. So if there hadn't been a second book, I would have been very angry.
Yeah.
But there is a second book, and basically it is on the film set. And I assume it's going to be the same. They're going to get together and solve the mystery. But I love it because it's got everything in it that I love about crime. So it's got the whole golden age feel to it. And I don't know that will continue through the rest of the books, but they'll still be Delia's.
Yeah.
So, but it's also got that kind of modern touch to it. And what I should have said was all the guests in the house got their mobile phones taken off them, which was quite a good twist as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of felt golden agey because there was no technology.
Yeah.
But obviously somebody keeps their phone and things, or they have a second phone and things like that.
There's always a rule breaker.
Yes. And the actual murders, because there's more than one, themselves are cleverly done. And it has, as all great crime books should, especially Golden Age crime book, that moment where they all sit down in the library, I think it is, and they go round the circle and goes, well, you could have done it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It has that, and it has a policeman who's kind of in the background. Oh, it's just wonderful.
So it seems like she really must love her golden age as well.
Yes.
And she's writing almost like a love letter for the kinds of things she likes, but for fellow readers in the current modern times.
Exactly. It's really well done. It's just wonderful. Yes.
And sometimes you just want that comfort, right, of a genre that you know and love. With sometimes you experimental murder mystery books where you have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
But some you're oh, I like the tropes. I like all of this. You're just doing it in a new way.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
You've totally sold me. I mean, you sold it to me last week, but I for sure want to listen and read this book. But I think now we're going to take a short break to give ourselves a chance to rest, recover, but more importantly, to make sure our voices haven't lost to the ether.
Exactly.
But yes, we'll come back and we'll talk about our other books in a bit.
Excellent.
And we are back, still getting used to this new funky format. Thankfully, our recording and voices have not been lost, so you'll at least get half an episode, hopefully the full episode. But since you have two books to talk about, and since we just left on murder, do you want to pick up the strand for another murder?
Yes, I will. So, Relic by Preston Child. As I say, it's from the 90s. It's set in the 90s. It has a very 90s feel about it, which I love.
Oh, right.
It's so the technology and things is very 90s. At one point, they call something an extrapolator. We would not call it an extrapolator now. It would have some futuristic name.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was. It extrapolates stuff. The museum security was very much how it would have been in the 90s. So now, completely different, all that kind of stuff. But I loved that. It didn't feel dated, if that makes sense. It didn't feel as if, oh, this is just, it's like watching, for example, the very first Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And that's Michael Crichton, who wrote it, is very much along those lines. When you watch or read the first Jurassic Park, the technology and things like that, you do kind of go, But it doesn't matter because that's not what the story's about.
I mean, a good writer would invite you to suspend disbelief, right? Mm-hmm. So even if it's not as everything else, but you're like, doesn't matter. We're just gonna go in.
Exactly. And because it's an older book, I don't feel as if I'm going to spoil it for people by talking about it a bit more than I would usually. So it starts out with a few years, maybe 5 years earlier, these people from the museum, and I don't know all the academia kind of words for them, but they went off to discover something.
Yeah.
Sort of the Amazon kind of place somewhere. And they think there's a lost tribe of people who worship this thing, which is completely unpronounceable to me and is not on the back, so I can't help you there.
And I would have felt compelled to try.
But you're on this journey with them, and a few of the team have been kind of not killed off but gone missing or whatever. And this main guy here, he's kind of talking away and he's kind of saying, right, we're going to go and find this thing, because they believe that the people worship this kind of almost devil-like person or thing. They know that the tribe calls it he who walks on all fours or something like that.
Very friendly, neighborly kind of fella.
Basically, the legend is that the tribe kind of sold their souls or whatever to have this thing that would be of the other tribes, and then obviously, as these things do, it's not turned out quite the way, because bargaining with the devil never works out.
And will they learn?
Exactly. Anyway, so the person in charge of the kind of expedition, that's what I'm looking for. Yay. Says his second person, right, you take the crates back to where they need to go. I'm going to go on and look for this person who's been lost, and I'll meet you back up, wherever. Obviously, that does not happen. The crates then kind of get lost on their way back to the museum. So we're now 5 years roughly later. The crates are in storage, and the museum is putting on a special display thing. What's the word I'm looking for here, Pari? You had
exhibition?
Exhibition, yes, thank you. I was looking for a bigger word.
Similar confusing word. Yes. Exhibition.
Yes.
Like, what is the word?
For this thing. And it's called Suspicion. So they're kind of looking at how different people through history looked at death and things like that, the kind of superstition.
Oh, wow, I would totally go for this.
Yeah. But there's been a few incidences that were just kind of vaguely mentioned. And our main character, so our main character is a man called Prendergast. I said that slowly there.
That's quite a name, though, for a protagonist.
He works for the FBI out of New Orleans, which is one of the places that the crates stopped on their way to New York.
Oh.
A couple of murders happened there. He was investigating that. Then they find a couple of, sadly, kids get murdered in the same fashion in the museum. So he's kind of like brought on board. He is a brilliant character, and I'm really looking forward, because this is quite a long series. I'm looking to see how he kind of develops. And then we've got like a policeman who's, quite happy for him to take over, because it's not like, sometimes you get these ones and you just like storm in and take over, and the police are like, he's quite happy to kind of work with them. We've then got like the directors of the museum and things who kind of know stuff but are not letting on what they know. And then we've got the female character who I've forgotten the name. Sorry, I literally only finished this the other day. And I can't remember her name. Sorry.
Jessica.
We'll call her Jessica. She works for one of the kind of main guys in the museum. She's looking at something. I can't remember what her kind of major, I don't know if you would say, is. but she kind of gets embroiled with it as well. There's a journalist as well who's been asked to write a book about the museum, who's on, site when all these things happen, and of course his journalistic kind of, is to find out about the murders. But one of the kind of directors are saying, no, you're just here to talk about the museum, and you will only write what we want you to write in this book. And of course he's like trying to investigate. So there's loads going on. There's not loads of characters, but there's enough characters to see something different. There's also a couple of shady in the background kind of characters that you're like, ooh, what are you up to, kind of a thing. And it's just a really good kind of adventure story. So
is it supernatural as well?
It's got a touch of that, but although there's this kind of monster in the background, it's not like a main. It's like, it's not like Jurassic Park when there was loads of dinosaurs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you imagine Jurassic Park with just one dinosaur, in the background, it's a realistic monster, if that makes sense. So part of one of the things that they're doing is this kind of extrapolator, which takes like DNA from things and kind of works out where it came from. So at one point they get DNA of this monster and it's like part human, part reptile. There's all sorts of things going on. So they kind of go, oh no, that can't be true. And then they kind of retest it and things like that. Oh, that's interesting. But how I'm squeezing this into the flowers theme.
Oh, yes. How are you?
Yes. When they were back in the Amazon, the people, the tribe that I can't pronounce, had this. There's a few, like, when they eventually get into the crate, they find some bits and pieces, and one of them is like a kind of, I'm thinking it's like a kind of disc, kind of bigger than a CD kind of thing, and it's like it would fit into your art book actually. It's got like art around it, and it looks like there's this big field or lake or something with lily pads on it. You can't quite tell, but it seems to be that's what they did. They harvested these, so it's kind of like what's happening there. And it turns out that was the food for the monster. Yes. And after the expedition happened, where it was, bad things happened because bad things have been happening. Humans are rubbish. And the whole place was kind of napalmed, so that they could get to the precious metals. Exactly, because we're rubbish. We are rubbish. So basically, that food, that plant life, was killed off. So our friendly monster did not have anything to eat, and it seems to be that he's made his way. It's not quite clear whether he came with the crates or whether he followed the crates or what, but he's followed them to get the food.
And he's diversifying his diet.
Well, it turns out that the food is kind of made up of, which again I can't remember, one part of our brains, a very small part of our brains. So basically when he's killing people, it's to get to this very small part of the brain.
Okay, that's made it much worse.
Yes, it's now getting slightly dark. Sorry. Yay!
But also, when you think back to like Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Dan Brown and stuff, a lot of it. I mean, hijinks, shenanigans, but also really dark.
No, exactly. And so obviously, like, people are not believing this as a monster. They just think there's a murder, blah, blah. So they try and stop the opening of this big suspicion exhibition. And of course, the museum directors, who are a bit shady, know something. Right, no, we want to open this up. And that's when it gets into proper good territory, because there's lots of people, lots of famous people in ball gowns and things like that, want to see this before it's open to the public. It's a big, pre-opening thing. And of course, our monster kind of realises there's a lot of brains to be eaten. And it just, absolutely brilliant. And I'm not doing it credit at all, because it's much better than any of that. But it was just one of these stories, like, I like Matthew Riley, I like Michael Crichton, one of these things that just keeps going and going and going. There's no kind of, and then they sat down and had a cup of tea. Yeah. It's all like, and then they went into this room, and then they discovered this, and then they did this, and it's just like constant. It's one of those books that you just read so quick because you want to go on, and then get to the end and go, oh no, I finished it. What happened there? It's just one of those really good romps of a book.
I would fully recommend By the Sound of It to someone who wants to shut off the world and just get lost in like a monster book. But yeah, I like those kinds of books, sometimes the art book is not one of them because you need your brain. But I'm not that you don't need your brain here, but your brain is so enraptured by this thing, and like there's, as you say, there's no point to stop and like drink tea even as a reader.
Exactly, it's just when you go, and it's great because it is set in a museum, and we all kind of know, most people know what museums are like. Even if you've seen Night at the Museum, you get that kind of feel that it's a museum full of dinosaur bones and like cavemen sitting behind glass, all that kind of stuff. You get to see behind the scenes, and it's amazing because I'm sure he did a lot of research, or they did a lot of research, but there's even more not on show than there is on show. There's so much that hasn't been catalogued yet. And even now, that's probably the same.
Oh, it is, yeah.
The museum itself is like kind of seems to be built on other things, and like the sub-basements and sub-basements haven't been mapped or anything. The storm drains coming through, and of course on the night of the big opening, there's a huge storm which knocks out the power. It's just, if Bruce Willis was to walk in with a vest, it's that kind of just action, and I loved it.
Oh, yeah, you've sold it quite well. The one thing that, I don't understand is why people are always so resistant or reluctant to believing that there would be a monster or like magic, or I'm like waiting when is it happening? Because you read and watch these things, you're always like, oh, that's such a ridiculous explanation.
Well, the professor that's kind of in charge of a female character in the extrapolators.
Jessica?
Yes, Jessica, thank you. He has come up with this theory, which I can't remember the theory's called either, I'm useless, that evolution doesn't happen all the time over a long space of time, that sometimes nature just puts in, it changes things. So he's not surprised about this monster, basically. This monster has been almost created to kill off humans, and that's what he's kind of saying, that every now and again nature will put on, and he thinks the dinosaurs were the same, will put a creature and at the moment it's human beings, get so big and take up so much that nature kind of goes, right, okay, what can I do to take this back? And that's what his thinking is, that there's going to be like a species that comes out that is basically made to kill off this other species, and then hopefully they'll disappear as well because they've done their job.
Yes, that's really interesting, because I have read a few books like that where fungi like seem to play that role almost, where they sort of like take over humans and humans become like a bit zombie-ish. Like it's a trope that more contemporary, so not in the 90s. But for exactly that, like it's a new species. So the fungi are like, the fungus, the mushrooms and stuff are living off of us, but then they are becoming, like they are the next stage in our evolution, and kind of like killing vast parts of the population, but then changing the ones that remain to have a more balanced, I guess.
And that's balance is a great way of looking at things. That's what he's kind of saying. It can't be that one species, like back in the day, the dinosaurs, just ruled the earth and crunched through everything. There has to be something that kind of knocks them back. So it is good.
Well, balance is an excellent segue to my book, The Girl and the Galadriel, Lightfall. So Lightfall is the name of the series, and this is the first book. There's 2 more out so far, and it is a part of a series. So like it's not like, I mean, I don't think it would be satisfying as a standalone, but it's a good job because they're fantastic. So it's about this girl called Bee, and she lives with her grandfather, the Big Wizard. But the grandfather, like, she was adopted as a baby. They live a quiet life in the forest. He makes potions, sells potions and things. But for the last wee bit, he is like losing his memory and stuff. So she's become the caretaker. And she has to, make sure that he like remembers all these things. But the one thing that he did, like he's been instilling in her from birth, is that they're the protectors of this light flame. I think, what is it called? Something to do with light, like a flame. I knew this last week, but I have forgotten. That they're the protectors of it. So she knows this. She's been like, she knew this since she was young. And he remembers this off and on. So it starts off with, obviously, as these kinds of books do, in like when things were not like they were all right so far, and now they're not. She goes to the forest to collect some ingredients for this potion that her grandfather is making. No, none of which are flowers. Berries, which grow from flowers, but yeah, no, or become flowers. I'm not quite sure in the biology, but there's a flower involved somewhere. But lots of flowers on the cover. And when she goes in to the thing, she's like climbing trees and trying to get things. And suddenly she bumps into this creature called the Galudrian, who does not. So B is human looking, so far we think. There's also a cat, an excellent cat. And the Galudrian looks like no creature that we know before.
It's almost like a potato.
Oh, yes.
Legs and eyes.
And an armor. So it's a warrior potato. I think that's really good.
That's not a book, it should be.
It should be, yeah. So he has come to actually look for the pig wizard because he woke up like one day, like recently, and looked around and all his people have disappeared. All of them. There is no Galudrian in sight. The last thing he remembers is he's gone to sleep in his village and nobody. Whereas for B, the Galudrians are these race of ancient beings and they've not been seen in generations. And he refuses to believe this because he can't be the last Galudrian left. So he's heard tales of the pig wizard. So we don't quite know how old this pig wizard is. Or maybe some people have like told him that he's probably the person to help.
He's a pig wizard. Obviously,
yeah. So he is. So he's gone on a quest to find the pig wizard. So B says, okay, yeah, let's go. We'll find Grandpa. She knows him. Goes to the house and the pig wizard is not there. Like he keeps disappearing in this book. Because the pig wizard has left a note for B to say that I have just remembered something that I'd forgotten for a long time, that there's a seal that needs to be checked every so often, regularly, and I haven't done it. I'd forgotten about it, so I hadn't done it. And it's like immediate. I need to go, so I can't even wait for you to come back from the forest. Do not follow me. Take care of the light flame.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's specific instructions.
There is a specific instruction.
Guessing I'm not going to be followed.
Well, if it was up to B, she would have listened to him. Yeah, because she is not an adventurer, this B. No, she has a lot of, and that's, I think, represented quite well in this book. She's quite an anxious child. Like, usually you think of these adventurer types as like, like Gryffindors, from Harry Potter. Oh, gung-ho, no thinking, just action. Whereas she like overthinks, like to an extent that sometimes paralyzes her. She's not super confident in herself. She's really like terrified of all the things that can go wrong. Whereas the Galudrian, whose name I've completed, Cad.
It's not just me then that forgets names.
No. One day we'll like guess the name and it'll be the correct name. This time, luckily, it's on the back. Cad. He is the complete opposite. He is all Gryffindor, all gung-ho, doesn't think of the consequences of what he's doing, is just all there. And that provides a nice balance, I think, because they become friends throughout this book and throughout the other two books, and they provide each other with what the other lacks or like is missing. And so she like helps him slow down, whereas he helps her like, do things and develop confidence. So yeah, that's basically what the book is about, that they're going to find the grandpa. But they're the big wizard, yes, I'm so sorry, I keep forgetting. And then they're like going through this stunning landscape, which is like a proper fantastic. Oh, right. This I did not show you the last time. As you see, it's unlike the other pages that I've opened, which is completely useless for an audio medium, but you just have to borrow this book. So, when they go through the forest, all light and plants and whatever, and then this darkness. So, in the rest of the series, so this is just the first, and like in the series, so you don't know much about what's going on in the wider world. So you're learning with B, and you're also learning with Cad. So Cad knows some stuff from ancient times that his people had created these lights, so it's the equivalent of the suns and like things that are like shine light on the planet. But then at some point, the world has become dark. Like there are only a few of these lights left, and the Galudrians are gone, so there's nobody to rebuild these lights. And we find out more throughout, a little bit in this book, and then throughout the next two books, who was it that has made the light go away, and what's going to happen, and what role they play. But also what I really love is it's not as black and white as, heroes and villains makes it seem, because we learn more about the bad guy and from their perspective. And it's such a nuanced and like for a kids, I say that for a kids book, that was quite dismissive. Kids books are complex and nuanced. Absolutely. And this one is like, so it is for like middle grade kids, I would say, but for adults as well. It's like a really, I don't want to say cozy because a lot is going on, but it is, like it is.
I think the word you used last time was safe.
Yes, yeah.
Things are happening, but that it's...
Yes, because you're in a children's book world. So, of course, there are some children's books that like completely traumatize you.
Yes, absolutely.
This is not one of them. Yeah, yes. This is not one of them. You're quite in safe hands, yeah. Because with the three dahlias, the trope.
Yeah.
So the fantasy and stuff and like whatever, but it's not going to be like terrible. And there are a lot of people they meet along the way and build these relationships and alliances and things. And this landscape is stunning. There's dangers, there's weird creatures. So it's just like a good adventure.
Everything that you want.
And it's a graphic novel, as you said. So you can actually see, you don't just have to imagine, you can see the stunning artwork. And I believe he used to work in Pixar. And this does feel like a Pixar. You'd love to see it on the big screen, but because you can see it in like a tiny little glimpse of the book. Yes. But yeah, so this would be a perfect lunchtime book for you.
It is my lunchtime book for today.
Yeah, and I would recommend this to young people, adults. It's just a fantastic one, and I would recommend the whole series as well.
And do you know is there going to be more than 3?
Yes, they're definitely, because I've read, hopefully, because I've read the third one and it doesn't end end. So yes,
more.
We do need more.
Excellent.
Taking to your graphic novel.
So I don't know if there's going to be more of this. I know that there's 2, actually, because I looked it up the other day, but I don't know how many.
Yeah, because it's book 1.
It does say book 1 on it. So the reason I picked it up was because it was by Dan Santak, and I had kind of run out of books to read. And I am dipping my toe into the graphic novel. You've made me dip my toe in.
Oh, yeah.
And because I know that I liked the other one, I thought I'll give this a go. And basically it's called Sidekicks. And on the front you can see we have not a guinea pig, what's the other thing? A gerbil.
Yes.
We've got a cat, we've got a dog, and we've got a chameleon. So basically we have a superhero called Captain Super or something like that. And he fights crime, but he's getting a little bit old.
You can see the greys.
Yes, very chiselled, but he's getting a bit grey. But the story begins basically with the dog and the gerbil stroke hamster, stroke guinea pig. Hamster, I think it is a hamster. Sitting in the house, eating popcorn, watching TV, and having a wee chat. And it turns out that they are the pets of said superhero. And superheroes have sidekicks, but our superhero doesn't have one at the moment. He used to have one, but something happened.
Drama.
Yes, so he's on his own. However, after his latest adventure, he realises he's getting a bit, if you see what I mean, and basically phones up the superhero society, because there's a society of superheroes, and says, we need to advertise for a sidekick. I need kind of backup. I'm getting a bit old now, and he also wants to spend a bit more time at home with his pets. He's getting to that kind of stage. But his pets are the ones that want to become his sidekick. The hamster, gerbil, guinea pig, and the dog kind of don't get on, but do get on, if you know what I mean. There's quite a lot of stuff that happens in the background between the two of them while other things are happening. They're having like kind of wee fight in the background, over the remote control or whose turn it is to have popcorn, that kind of a thing.
Even if you live together,
No, exactly. It's that kind of a thing. Our superhero man's kind of slightly oblivious.
Looking quite decrepit.
He needs, he needs a wee break.
He looks like he does.
He's just kind of. Meanwhile, while he's doing that, thinking he's going to spend more time with them, they're wanting to do more kind of superhero stuff. It's a very good book. It's very funny. I really enjoyed it. I read it in my lunch hour. It's very quick to read. The pictures, just like they were in the other book, are really, really good.
so much personality.
There's loads of stuff happening in the background as well. I'm just showing you here that they go to a restaurant and there's a big hippo eating all the food.
As you do.
Yes, yeah. So there seems to be a lot of animals who are characters as well, if that makes sense. You know, it's a kind of world where the animals talk and things like that.
And the humans understand that.
You know, we get a wee bit of the city, you know, there's all sorts of things happening. And it's just one of those books that, again, I'm glad I read. And I will read the next ones in the series just to find out what happens. It's not a standalone book either. You know, you want to know what happens because there's a villain that comes in and, you know, is there other shady things going on in the background. The villain seems to be reformed after his time in prison, but is he? You know, it's that kind of a thing. You know, our main superhero, is he going to be all right? Is he going to, you know, he is getting old a bit, but, you know, if he's got...
If he deal with his animals, like leaving him.
He also has a nut allergy, which I think is great. It's a bit like kryptonite, you know, it's like, because like right at the beginning when he's like foiled, whatever it is, he bumps into a peanut stand and sees peanut on the floor and freaks out. You know, it's just like it's funny that the interaction between all the characters is really good, and it's a warm book. Like at the end, you know, it's a nice kind of, everybody kind of goes, right, okay, you're a bit weird, but so am I, so if we can be weird together. It's that kind of a story, and it was really good, but not a single flower in it.
Oh no, but I think Bee and Cad might, you know, want to befriend, like I said, the flowers of friendship. I love, you know, how wholesome.
Wholesome, that's a brilliant word.
Even this one is actually really wholesome because you see the friendship between Cad and Bee. And I think in a lot of like specifically middle grade graphic novels, they're talking about certain themes that kids at that age are going through, but I think are also universal. Like you don't lose these things, you know, when you're a child, you're still learning and growing and things. And it's just, like you say, it doesn't take too long to read. There's such nice palate cleansers as well in between books. When you're reading about murders and monsters, maybe you want to read about nut allergy. So I think B, I mean, you came with a bonus book, so B is like extra happy with you. What about next time?
So next time is, well, it's sort of our 50th episode. Obviously, we've got a couple of lost episodes out there, the best episodes we've ever
The best conversations ever.
But we're going to stick with next time, it's our 50th. So our next theme is birthdays.
Birthdays. Okay, right. Well, I was very alarmed the last time you told me this.
Then you've had to think about it.
I have had to think, so I'm glad. Like, I think I know what I'm going to be talking about. Question mark?
Your voice went up. We're also going to hopefully have a guest next time as well. So
that I'm very much looking forward to. So even if like I have to squeeze a birthday in, I'm sure both of you are going to be super prepared. So I can just. But until then, hopefully you'll hear us again next time. Bye.
Bye.